Welcome to Inside Crime, the Experts. At the outset, this show is available both on YouTube and on your favourite podcast platforms. In this series, we'll bring you updates on what is making news in the world of crime. Our experts will take you inside some of the most challenging crimes and mysteries. Many of these are unsolved. They're the stories of serial killers, murders, organised crime, disappearances, scams, frauds and heists. And now to our experts. Tim Watson-Munro is Australia's leading criminal psychologist. He's delved into the minds and crimes of some of the most notorious criminals in Australia and around the globe. Dr. Xanthe Mallet is a world-renowned criminologist and Associate Professor of Criminology at the Central Queensland University. And I'm Duncan McNabb. I started my life of crime as a detective in policing, then into major criminal defence and investigations in the corporate sector, before heading to the media as an investigative journalist, author and TV producer. This episode is all about the Erin Patterson case, one the three of us have been analysing and commenting on from when the mystery turned to murder. It started with four people: Erin's in-laws Don and Gail Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson. They were hospitalised with death cap mushroom poisoning after eating individual beef Wellingtons at a lunch served by Erin in her home in Leongatha, about 140 kilometres from Melbourne. This happened on the 29th of July 2023. Erin Patterson was convicted in 2025 on 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder. In September 2025, just weeks ago, she was sentenced to life behind bars with a non-parole period of 33 years. Now, to our experts, now let's have a chat about this.
Life with 33 years. She's done 2 years roughly on remand. She's now 50, so at the very minimum she'll be in her early 80s at the time she hits her non-parole period. A lot of discussion surrounding the non-parole period. Some people, believe it or not, felt it was a bit light. That's a long time in jail, particularly when you consider Erin's circumstances out of Dame Phyllis Frost. She's a protection prisoner, not because she is deemed to be a threat to other female inmates, but the authorities are firmly of the view that there are other people who are dangerous to her. Now, arising from that, and Justice Chris Beale made a fair bit of this in his sentencing remarks, her living conditions are onerous and contrary to basic rights. She's in a small cell. She's lucky to get an exercise period of about an hour a day, not every day, and non-association with any other prisoners. So she's essentially in solitary. She's been given permission to speak to one other inmate, which, as I understand it, has not occurred yet. But that inmate is a convicted terrorist.
On the 2nd of October, she was in court in Melbourne before Chris Beale, seeking to extend some orders, and the barrister then indicated that she would be lodging an appeal, and that presumably will be lodged by early November. The point you make about her living conditions, she's only got consent to speak to one person. Now, this is not because she wanted to chat to her, it's because the prison officers decided they should be able to associate, at least have a conversation through the mesh outside their cells and their little courtyards. The person she's allowed to talk to, as you said, is a terrorist. And having a quick look at the case, not only is she in jail for committing terrorist acts, she's also, whilst in prison, committed a terrible attack on another inmate. So she's a dangerous human being. So that's Erin's only conversation, if she chooses to have it.
And the irony of all that, it's totally counterintuitive, isn't it? Where you put someone in maximum isolation to protect them from other people in the jail. And who's your neighbour? A terrorist who's additionally dangerous because she attacks other inmates.
It's a very curious decision. I just wonder, it's quite perverse, actually. But Erin, from what we've seen of her so far, seems to be quite content with her own company, really, anyway. She's in a cell on her own, obviously. 22 hours a day if she's lucky. She's destined for a long, hard haul. But
we're looking at, guidelines that say 14 days, and she's looking at potentially years, if not decades. And do you think that's why she's employed the particular barrister that she has, which is Julian McMahon, who I think, Tim, you both know him really well, right? He's represented Barley 9. He's a human rights expert. I think that's right, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, look, he's highly regarded, and he's a terrific bloke, and I think that's right on the money.
Mm.
I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I've kicked around too many for too long. The only grounds I can see is the living conditions and a breach of human rights.
I wish him the best of luck with that because I would have thought the appeal would be on a problem with the judge's instructions or upon a point of law, not on a point of compassion. So whilst there's
Mm.
a very good, a very strong public argument, at the same time, there's not much about the law of the case. So good luck with it. I suppose I may be sounding a little bit harsh here, but other female prisoners who've committed horrific crimes of the same level of horror as Erin Patterson have over the years ended up in prison population. The two that come to mind quickly is Catherine Knight, who murdered, skinned, and cooked her partner, I'm sorry. And the other one that I had a lot of dealings with is Kath Burney, that horrible, absolute, complete mongrel from Perth, with her
Uh,
partner, David Burney. She's now become, I'm told, the queen bee of the prison she's in. And there's this remarkable photograph some years ago of Kath Burney appearing in the prison production of The Sound of Music as the Mother Superior. So,
if I could just add to that,
yep.
Justice Beale made the comment that she rubbed salt into the wound because when she went to the hospital, she didn't declare
Yeah.
the death cap mushrooms. He said it may or may not have made some difference in terms of their survivability, but in any event, the extreme, excruciating pain
Yeah.
that they went through was seen as an aggravating factor in
They
terms of
would
the
it would have
sentence.
changed their medical treatment and
Yes.
potentially
Yeah.
could have saved them.
This is Dr. Chris Webster calling from Leongatha Hospital, and I have a concern regarding a patient that presented here earlier but has left the building and is potentially exposed to a fatal toxin from mushroom poisoning.
I think one of the early treating doctors, Chris Webster, was being quite vocal about what he found
Oh,
in Patterson. Um,
yes.
and I think he made that remarkable comment, which couldn't go to the jury, of course, because it would be incredibly prejudicial. He made the comment afterwards at the moment that he was interviewing and said, "Where did you get the mushrooms?" And she said, "Woolworths." And I think he then later said something along the lines of, "I knew then she'd done something horrible,"
But
which,
Mm.
to
do you remember
paraphrase the
when
doctor, it's a pretty powerful case he's put. If Erin had put a hand up day one and said the reason they're sick is there might be some foraged mushrooms,
yeah,
they may have got involved earlier. And the
yeah.
sad story that we heard during the trial was Ian Wilkinson survived. He was the only one who did. The other three, the two women, for example, the doctor, the specialist who was treating them, said they were too sick for any intervention. Don Patterson had a liver transplant,
Mm,
but he couldn't survive it. And it's one of those awful cases where they've done their best, but he was the only one fit enough at that
mm.
time to undergo the surgery, and that failed as well. So, had Erin notified the doctors a bit earlier, it just could have made the difference for all three of them.
Oh, well, woulda,
But
shoulda, coulda.
Yeah.
Sorry, Xanth.
do you remember though, originally when this all happened and it was in the news that she was claiming that she had bought them from a Chinese supermarket?
Yes. Yeah, that was the first thing they did actually in the investigation. The health authorities were notified very early on
Mm,
once they realized there was a problem with the mushrooms.
yeah.
They had people out in the streets going to every possible Asian-ish grocery
Mm,
store
mm,
in a wide area. And they soon found that there was absolutely
mm.
nothing to
And there was no public call. And I remember thinking then
no.
it was that and the fact that her fake crocodile tears by the
Yeah.
car that I was thinking, something shady.
Yeah.
Like
The
why is
And
there
none of it stacked up. And as the trial unfolded, and as Justice Beale unpacked her evidence in his sentencing hearing, she just confabulated. She went from one lie to the next, and ultimately the jury saw that she was
yeah.
far from the truth.
She planned everything up until the point of being caught. She's so bloody arrogant.
she didn't that's because she never thought she was gonna
She
be
did, yeah,
caught.
she didn't plan her exit. And then she spun the story that she'd picked up the mushrooms and one of the supermarkets, oh sorry, one of the areas she mentioned was close to where she had a house in Melbourne. So she was spinning the story that the mushrooms had come from nearby, which she'd bought during a visit in April during school holidays. She used to take her kids into town and spend a couple of nights there and blah, blah, blah. And then she'd
And
actually kept them
that's
up.
what you do when you go out with your kids. You
Yeah.
go out and buy mushrooms, right?
Yeah, and the kids don't remember buying the mushrooms apparently. And curiously enough, the health officials have got involved very, very fast because they think that we need to eliminate a health problem. So quite an expensive investigation, purely. They check the health basis. They go back to the suppliers to Woolworths. They check everybody, and they soon realise that there's no public health risk.
There's no other reports of anyone even getting vaguely sick.
No reports of people getting sick, no mushrooms of that description in any of the stores they went to. And by this
But,
stage, cops are also involved thinking,
Yeah, right.
they
Because
keep an
they saw
open.
the crocodile
but
tears too.
Well,
picking up on your point about no exit plan, I actually think she did have an exit plan, but it was derailed because one of the victims survived and he became a key witness, i.e., the plates, different servings for
good
different
point.
people.
Yep.
She didn't count on that. And so the whole thing went out the window. There was that amazing footage of her going to the tip with
Yeah, she
the,
didn't count on them finding that either, which is
yeah,
dumb. Or the little booklet for the dehydrator, which
Yeah.
like the manual which she kept.
She's
Dumb.
she's committed what I often refer to as a Rogerson. She planned the crime meticulously, as Roger Rogerson did, but they missed that one
Yeah,
little
yeah,
CCTV camera.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's not dissimilar. I mean, you're right. She
That
had
little CCTV
that little
clip of them
CCTV, but
carrying the body.
I
Oh,
know,
I
and
saw that
everything.
and I was like,
The
is
whole
this
house of
a
cards collapses.
joke?
Yeah,
That's
And
meticulously planned, but with one error. And I
yeah.
think that's what Erin. I mean, I love the interview. She's hauled into the police station. They've searched a house. She's done this shifty deal with the mobile phone where she's
Yeah.
one, obviously, which we never see again. God knows what was on that, if anything, of course.
Well,
She
she
goes,
ditched it for a reason.
oh yeah, and she goes to the police, and she's a bit smug about this, I think, as well.
those cynicals, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was going well
Yes. Yeah.
until they set her up beautifully. Have you ever had a dehydrator? No, I don't think I've ever had a
What
dehydrator.
about this manual?
Weird.
Oh,
Yeah, later in the interview, so she's feeling all smug and happy. I've got this, and I've
and
got them conned.
and
Boom.
what she didn't know, and this is a lovely piece of police work. By that stage, the police had the CCTV from the tip, the waste transfer station, as they now politely call a garbage tip. They actually had this. They had the vision. So when they ask her the questions about the dehydrator, and she says,
They
"Oh,
knew the
had
answers.
one." Yeah,
Yeah.
they have the manual. That's a bit of an inconvenience, but they've got her on videotape, and
Yeah.
they know she's got one, and they know she's dumped it, and they've actually got the
And they've
blood.
actually got the bloody thing by that point. Yeah, I know.
It's congratulations. It's a lovely
yeah.
bit of police work. Congratulations. Walk to the end of the cliff and then jump over if you
Yeah,
wouldn't.
they let her do it too. They led her there like a lemming
Oh,
and let
look,
her leap over. It
how
was
they
great.
kept a straight face is just a remarkable piece of police work. And I've never
So,
foraged for mushrooms. Oh, maybe I did later on down the
Yeah,
track.
yeah,
I mean, have a story.
well,
Stick to it.
it's just making it up on the run, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
You
that's
must
when
have
things
realised
changed for
that.
her. I
Say it
think.
again.
I think that's when things change for her. That
Yeah.
bit in the interview where she realizes she's made a mistake, and until then she's got it all together. And then there's something on her face like shit,
Yeah.
and she tries to make it up as she goes, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. I
The
don't need a
goose
lawyer.
was
I know why.
cooked.
Yeah. She does the interview. She's offered a lawyer. She doesn't need one. She's quite
So
comfortable.
she's too arrogant to want a
Yeah.
lawyer. She
Yeah.
thinks she's all in
I'm
control.
relaxed. I've done nothing wrong, officer. Well,
Yeah.
hello. What she didn't realize, of course, is that they'd actually outsmarted her because they knew she'd done, well, they had a fair belief that she
Strong
might have been up to
suspicion.
something nefarious. It doesn't rush. It builds inch by inch. The bits of the jigsaw puzzle come together. And in November, congratulations, we're going to arrest you.
Yeah. Yeah, I did an interview on, it was Channel 7 in Nat Bar, and she was, I think it was Nat Bar, and was like, well, why is it taking 3 months to arrest her? That seems like a really long time. And I was like, this is a multiple death investigation. It was incredibly complicated. 3 months is not a long time to arrest
No.
somebody.
It's very brief, in
Very
fact.
brief.
Yeah.
A triple murder and attempted murder. This is not a long time.
They just can't think, oh, you look good, we'll
Yeah.
take you. They need to build that case. And again, to borrow from Roger Rogers, who once quipped in an interview, you never put this siren on to go to a murder. And
Well,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, if you're a homicide squad detective, and they've had to build
Well,
that.
I'm surprised Roger didn't, given his intellect.
Yeah, well, he put the siren on if there was a bag of money attached to the body. But the police would have taken a lot of advice as well, I would imagine, from lawyers along the way to make sure that their case is strapped up. So day one, when they front court in early November, they knew they had a really strong brief of evidence, and they knew
Which hasn't been compromised.
And they
No.
didn't need to rush. There was no need. They needed to get it right first time.
And she was also on remand waiting for the brief of evidence to be served weeks and weeks after that. And that's because, as both sides agreed, there was a massive amount of
Huge.
electronic stuff to go through.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what we always talk about these days. Investigations is very much upon what you'll find in the electronic equipment. And they had a lot of that to go through. And as we heard at the trial, painstaking evidence about where mobile phone towers were. I listened to
Yeah.
that. I glazed over. I mean, good on the jury for staying on the jury. And good on the lawyers presenting the evidence, because they had to have a crash course in this essential science, but Christ, it was boring. And ultimately didn't take us very far, because a lot of the mobile phone tower positioning wasn't. Justice Beale said to the jury they shouldn't be considering that. So that was the mobile phone tower evidence that said, here we found a website that indicates there's a death cap mushroom, and here we have Erin motoring past at a certain time. But what we can't do is prove that Erin stopped to collect the mushrooms, or that she
So how many?
there.
So they would have argued how many other people drove past. I
Yep.
mean, we could have driven past, and that doesn't mean that we
Yep.
foraged there. So
And
you can see why he was
yeah,
being straight down the line
I was.
to avoid
And
any opportunity for appeal, I think.
yeah, and the other slight trick with the two is that we actually couldn't prove, or they couldn't establish that Erin had in fact gone online to check that sighting as well. Now that, of course, who knows whether she did or she didn't? Was it on the other phone? Who knows? But they couldn't actually prove, or they couldn't establish any evidence whatsoever that Erin was actually on that website looking for death cap mushrooms in that area around about the time she then motored past.
What I find as an old man of the sea who's kicked around in this jurisdiction for way too long, decades, is just how things have changed, Duncan and Xanth. Like, back in the day, there were no mobile phones, there were no towers, there was no internet or
search
computers.
histories. Yeah.
So, technology has ended up cooking the goose of many felons who I think back in the day may have got away with it. But
Yeah.
you can't get away from the IT. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a prominent Sydney identity, and I'll leave it at that. We were chatting recently about this, and he said to me, and he's been around a while as well, and he said, mate, why would you do this these days? They'll nail you on the electronics.
I
You,
wonder who that
yeah,
was. No.
yeah, you're behind before you even start. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, an affable chap, and he's spot on the money. Um, Everything we're watched by CCTV. We have our internet histories. We've got our mobile phones.
Like your
Um,
watch, like GPS, heart rate monitor.
yeah,
Like and there have been cases, I can think of one case where a woman was killed by, I think it was her daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law said it was a fall and she found her in the kitchen or whatever, but it was actually blunt force trauma and she'd killed her.
yeah.
And she said she'd got home at a certain time or gone round to see her at a certain time, and that's when she was found dead. But they could prove when she died because her heart had peaked when the attack happened,
Yep.
and then she died. And
If someone who's a true crime obsessive, and there's this bizarre side story in this about her Facebook groups and her online interactions with people, obsessed by crime. They start with the Kelly Lane case.
oh,
He
All
doesn't like Dr. Mallet, by the way.
yes, all her online friends. I mean, she's got no friends in public. She's only got the family she tried to murder and successfully did on a couple of occasions. She has no friends outside of her husband's estranged husband Simon's family. But she's got this online life that she's been leading since about 2019 or so, when she joins a Keep Kelly Lane Behind Bars Facebook group.
is
And
that where this discussion
yeah,
happened?
and that's where all
they all hated Kelly Lane then.
yeah, and a group of women come together, and I've interviewed some of them, and I like most of them, but some of them are interesting, to put it mildly. And Erin gets involved in that group, and they develop friendships. COVID comes along, so it becomes a conduit for conversation
The
about everything.
irony that this
And
woman is in a Facebook group, keeps someone else in prison for which I don't think there's enough evidence that she's in there for murder, but that's another thing. But keeping her in prison, and Erin Patterson hates Kelly Lane, doesn't she? Quite passionately.
Oh yeah,
While she's currently plotting to kill her own family.
yeah, and this is where, as Tim mentioned earlier, one of the women in the Facebook group, and as I said before, the ones I've spoken to are great, and they're terrific to chat to. She said, Xanthe Mallet's a mate of yours. Yeah, she is. You might tell her that Erin hated her.
Yes. Oh God, I can't tell you
It's
how
just,
much I love
it's
that
just,
fact.
it's,
awesome, right?
yeah, but
To be hated by Erin Patterson, I think, given she's a mass murderer. I'm not
I'd
going to
leave it
believe
alone.
anything she
Yeah.
sends me either.
But and this group, because she was obsessed with the group, she was obsessed by crime. She was involved in so much true crime. She loved it. And one of them was telling me that the background music to her day was podcasts on true crime.
I didn't examine her, but in general terms, her behaviour would indicate that she's been flying a few propellers short of a plane for a while. And the interesting thing about this case, which I've commented upon many times with the media, no psychiatric or psychological evaluation, no evidence tendered referable to her mental state at the sentence hearing. And Justice Beale made that comment. He said, I'm really reliant upon anecdotal evidence from others about her background history because nothing from an expert was tendered. Now, I found that curious. No criticism of the legal team. They're operating on instructions inevitably. But I can't think of any murder case I've been involved with over the years, and there's been plenty of them, where the person has not been evaluated, generally within a fortnight of their arrest and remand, because you want to get baseline information that you can then comment upon if the person's found guilty, or to determine whether, in fact, there's a mental state defence to the alleged crime. Now, her position was it was a big accident, there's nothing wrong with me, but who knows, maybe there are some lurking things in her mind that only she knows about.
Oh,
It's
there
an
are
interesting,
some, I guarantee
yeah,
there's some lurking things
and
in
it's
her
a curious
mind.
point you made because the police investigation was meticulous.
Mm.
And they had her extensive medical histories, all the places that all the practitioners she'd been to see. It was, and at one point they went through her medical history, but there was never any mention in that medical history of any psychiatric involvement, any involvement of a mental health professional to assess her either. And this goes way, way back. About the only evidence we have is that Simon, her husband, in his evidence suggested she had mental health issues going back quite some time. That was one of the problems in their marriage. But it remains undiagnosed, untreated, if there were any at all. The family have had a dignified silence. The only person who has actually spoken publicly about what happened was Ian Wilkinson. He gave the media what they needed. Very sensible. He gave that very brief, very dignified statement outside the court, closed it down, and
Didn't take
left.
questions. What I
Um,
thought was beautiful about that was he took the power back. He said, basically, I'm no
yeah.
longer a victim of her. She's a victim of my forgiveness or something
What?
along those
Yeah,
lines. Kind of,
my
and I
kindness, I
thought
think.
that
Yeah,
was very powerful.
an incredible bloke, and what a morning in court that was. And for the first time, the victims actually spoke. The pivot was Erin Patterson's always been in the limelight. That morning, the victims actually finally got to
Yeah.
say what they had to say. So again, that power shift as well. The power's gone to them, as it should be.
Exactly as it should.
And
Well, she's fairly powerless now. The other thing I wondered about was uh, whether she's getting visits or whether she will get visits, because this, I think, is an aggravating feature in terms of the early discussion about isolation in
yep.
very confined circumstances, the size of a family bathroom, basically. And I know if I was facing 33 more years of this, it would not be good for one's mental health. I've examined quite a number of people who've been in solitary for extended periods of time because of logistic constraints within the prison, and it has a telling impact on them. And for those that have been released and ultimately get out of jail, that telling impact can be nearly lifelong in terms of
Yep.
high levels of trauma. Now, some of our listeners would say, well, so what? She's committed these terrible crimes, she's been found guilty. But I think as a society, we're better than that. And there must be, if there are these constraints, much we can do about it.
It needs to be better. It's just,
Do you think she'll get visitors then, Duncan? Is that something that's on the
yeah,
cards for her?
she's entitled to get visitors.
But who's going to visit her?
There are a couple. Well, there are a couple of problems. There's a security aspect. At the present moment, I suspect, and this is speculation on my part, that if she has a physical visitor, that they would have to go to the visitor centre, but it wouldn't be when she's exposed to other prisoners because it's a high security risk. So that makes a one-to-one visit, even through plexiglass, very difficult.
It's doable, though. It's
It's
doable.
doable, sure. And I suspect that other visits might have been via, at least by Zoom calls or similar, which is not uncommon in prisons these days. Plus, prisoners also have a right to use a phone occasionally. But again, Erin's in this interesting position, problematic position, is that they to let her out to use the technology means they have to have prison officers to make sure she's secure when she's doing so. But to get to the other point that Xanthe makes, I'd be surprised if her family are going to visit her. Basically, it's her sister who's been completely isolated from everything, doesn't get a mention anywhere. In fact, Erin, I think, seems to excise her from her life.
Yeah, in
Good
that
news for
police
good news for
interview,
the sister, I'd have to say.
in the police interview, she says that the Pattersons and Wilkinsons were the only family she has. She actually
Yeah,
almost pretends not to have any biological family in that interview.
exactly. Her sister, yeah, what she must be
Well,
true as well.
the elephant in the room is her
The
children.
kids.
And we can't really comment upon the kids, but I would imagine uh, as a mother, she would want to see them. And clearly, children need some sort of relationship with their mother. She
Yeah.
could be moved around the jail. It's a bit of an inconvenience, but when you consider what the rest of the week's like for her, I would have thought it's a small ask.
Surely she'll be
Yeah,
getting
it's
legal visits though. She must be meeting with her legal team or at least conversing with the legal team.
Well,
and
that may be done over Zoom. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of the
that's
work I
right.
do now
Yeah.
is
yeah.
IT based.
I think that a lot of there is quite a lot of this discussion, not one to one, but by
Well,
Zoom.
surely she could have visits from anyone who did want to visit her via
Yeah,
Zoom or whatever as well.
she has one person who's been supporting it, for want of a better term,
Yeah, we saw her outside the court.
who's and she's copped a lot of flack, but she did the basic humanities, like making sure that throughout this entire trial that Erin had fresh clothes. Just the simple things to look after. Yeah, I think she's committed one of the most appalling crimes I can lay my hands on, but
Mm.
no need to be barbarians ourselves.
Well, that's what separates
Yeah,
us from them, isn't it,
and
basically?
says she's
Yeah.
only had this, I think, one friend who has a power of attorney as well, because Erin has still considerable assets, and I think I saw recently her car's been
But
up for sale.
Hasn't the house been?
my view on that, just to be clear, is that I understand the Office of Corrections position. I don't think they're being barbaric.
No,
They have said, look, we're constrained by the realities of
Mm,
life here,
mm,
and we're not worried about her. We're worried about other people who will try to get to her. So,
mm.
in a kind of paradoxical way, they're trying to protect her, and in so doing, through no fault of their own, really, because of the way the jails are constructed,
Another
it's an
paradox
extra
is
punishment.
it is.
yeah,
And if I read anything about Erin Patterson, she will be loving being the center of attention.
I
So this being the center of attention, I think, is what is, she finds particularly exciting, given she was probably no one's center of attention previously.
I've always had this nasty thought in the back of my mind, because I have a fairly nasty mind, that there is a certain degree of
He's
fascination.
admitted it, Xanth. He's
I
admitted
heard it.
it.
Well, you heard it here.
Yeah,
Mm.
she's cast herself in
As,
her own true crime
yeah,
drama.
she has, and she is
She's
the
on center
arch
stage.
villain, and thought she was going to outsmart everybody.
There's a flurry of media interest at the moment. There has been for the last 3 years.
Hmm.
The appeal will amplify that for a bit, but ultimately she will fade into obscurity
Yeah,
like all the others have,
yeah.
because the press lose interest. It's done and dusted, and there you go. The final round of this will be the appeal if it's granted. But after all that's finished, you're faced with a clanging of the iron door. And, even if there's some reduction on the 33 years, in my respectful view, it's an academic point, given her age.
I just don't see. Justice Beale has really thoroughly researched this, and the curiosity about this trial too is that there was a lot of agreement between both Patterson's counsel and the prosecutors on evidence that should be adduced. So I think the avenues for appeal are significantly reduced. But I agree with Tim. It's academic. She's going to be 80 years old before
Mm,
she is eligible for parole.
yeah,
And there's no guarantee then she'll get parole.
correct.
She may live a blameless life in prison. She may not. And I'm just curious. And it's one of the weird things about these people who I think crave the limelight. and I think that Erin Patterson certainly does, is you keep hearing from them in prison just when they get a bit bored or something or
She'll
other.
be writing to a
Like,
friend letters that will
yeah,
appear in the media or something when
oh,
she starts to be a
again,
bit
yeah.
obscure.
Rogerson was always enjoying his days in court for his appeals and being
Yeah,
called into inquiries. The one that reminds me strongly of this is, again, the murder of a family with utter brutality in this case, is Seth Gonzalez, that horrible
Oh,
trip in
yes.
Sydney, who
Yeah.
murdered his mother, father, and sister, or tried to murder them by poison first and failed. Then he went on to something more simple like a knife and a baseball bat. Horrible little creep. He pops up like a turd in a punch bowl, I think, to use an old Australian, with
Oh,
great
I'm having that
regularity.
one. I love
And
You're
that.
on fire today,
and he,
Loving
Macleod.
that.
yeah,
Turd
well,
in a punch
I
bowl.
was chatting to a copper mate of mine who was involved in the investigation and said, mate, all this Menendez brothers stuff in the US about them trying to get out early and blah blah blah, and how bad their family were and yada yada yada, extenuating circumstances. I said, there's a real chance that Seth Gonzalez is going to have yet another crack, and
I
as that
read that.
item in the punch bowl pops up, Seth is now, at the time of we're talking about, trying to get back into court to get some more leniency. Good luck.
Tell
Looking
me
forward to
about
reading the
your
grounds.
book. You have
Ah,
an erudite, learned tome.
brief book plug. Erin Patterson, A Recipe for Murder, due out on the 14th of October, about the time this will go to air, actually, published by
Nice.
Hachette. And I'm also reliably informed about to hit the shelves in the UK.
The family, right? So they've been through this really long trial. She's never shown any remorse or guilt for any of this. Whether she still claims non-intent, she could still have been remorseful for the harm she caused. If this were to go to a retrial, for example, if the grounds are upheld and we go to retrial, this poor family, every step she takes to keep this in the through the legal system re-traumatizes them.
Yeah,
And I find that really offensive, actually, that family have
I
been through
agree.
enough.
Every step that these poor people have taken towards getting some finality in this
Yep,
case,
yep.
she's then
Well,
inexorably.
allow me to be the contrarian. I'm sympathetic to that argument, but everyone has a right to appeal at law.
That's true.
And no matter how horrendous the crime, whether it goes anywhere, and I take your point, there can be no real closure for people until it's all finished, but you've got to have the appeal. You have a right to
You
it.
have the right to appeal, yeah. I just think, I do think she's guilty, and I think she should just
Well, so
leave
did the
them alone.
jury, by the way.
Mm.
I
Well,
don't
yeah.
think it's an argument about, or maybe it is an argument about guilt.
Yeah, that
I can't see that bird will ever get any feathers to fly. I would have thought it's more about severity ultimately
Yeah.
and
And
living conditions, but
living
who
conditions.
knows?
yeah,
Um,
the jury were concise. I still remember that last day of the deliberations. We were in the media room, thinking we've gone from 90% for a conviction, and at that stage I was chatting to a couple of journo mates down there, and we think, well, we know we believe she's guilty, but the evidence we're now down to about 60-40 to a conviction because
mm,
we can't put ourselves in the mind of the jury. And about
mm,
2 hours after that insightful conversation by them all, the jury came up, the foreman stood up and went, guilty, 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 4 counts, guilty on 3 counts of murder, guilty on 1 count of attempted murder, all over. And
that's it.
that huge sigh of relief from everybody,
Mm.
from Erin, of course, who just sat there stony faced in her sandals.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about motive. We know the method. I don't think we'll ever know unless she does a mea culpa and says, look, I did it for these reasons. It's highly speculative. There's no psychiatric or psychological evidence that can speak to that issue. And I think it's maintaining that sort of air of mystique in many ways, isn't it? Maintaining your silence, having people guess about it. Um, there was only one motive, as far as I can see, and that was to kill people.
Revenge.
And it's contemplating this for many years and meeting people who have committed horrible crimes. They don't need a motive. The motive or why they do it is because these people are inconvenient.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
horrified.
Or,
We're absolutely
or
She
you're
horrified.
feels
angry,
wronged.
Yeah.
She
or
feels wronged, and this is revenge. That's
Yeah,
it. I mean, obviously, I
and
haven't.
they
That's
contemplate
my
murdering
guess.
someone the same way we would contemplate buying a suit or some clothing.
Yeah.
It's for them, it's just an inconvenience. To go back to what Tim has always said,
or sorry, Duncan.
I love your quote. They're not mad, they're just bad,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah,
just
Yeah.
approach life differently.
Yeah.
they do. Will there be another Erin Patterson, I wonder? Will there be copycat poisonings of some description. I don't see it on the immediate horizon. I mean, apart from any other reason, the police and the community are alive to this stuff in a way that they've not been in the past.
And cases like this are utterly unpredictable. Who would have thought a stay-at-home mum from Leongatha in rural Victoria would commit a crime that would actually commit mass murder and have the entire world focused on her? Completely unpredictable. One oddity I've noticed is that beef Wellington has resumed its popularity on menus.
Mm.
Well, I won't be
Not in
having it
my
because
house.
I'm a pescatarian.
Thanks, Xanthe and Tim, and thanks everyone for watching or listening to Inside Crime the Experts. Our episodes, as I said at the head, are also available as podcasts on your favourite podcast platforms. And a quick book plug. My book, Recipe for Murder, is now out on the shelves. See you next time, and please like our channel and podcast and subscribe. Thank you.